You're listening to the Generational Wealth Through Commercial Real Estate podcast. Your host, Will Smith, is a former NFL player that found his passion in commercial real estate. Every week, you will learn from industry experts everything you need to know to get started investing in commercial real estate to build generational wealth.
Okay, so today's guest is Kevin Garner. He's with Multifamily Utility Solutions. I might have said that wrong, but nevertheless, they're helping you save money. And they're going to increase your revenue and reduce your utility expenses. Kevin, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, Willie. I'm doing awesome, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, man. It's New Year's Eve here, and I'm excited for the new year. 2020 is going to be a great year for Onyx Capital Investments, and man, I can't wait. How about yourself, man?
Exactly the same. We had a great year in 2019, and I think we just built such a strong foundation that no reason to expect 2020 not to be as good or definitely better.
Absolutely. So, man, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with this multifamily utility company.
All right. So I worked for Comcast for many years, one of the largest telecommunications companies in the country. And one of my roles there, I oversaw the department that negotiated with multifamily property, apartments, homeowners associations, condominiums, mobile home parks, that negotiated for the right to be on their property to serve residents.
Yeah.
So I oversaw that department. And when I left Comcast, I formed Telecom Marketing Strategies, which is the parent company of Multifamily Utility Solutions, just to confuse things a little bit, right?
Right.
So we actually worked for Charter Spectrum and Comcast. They were some of our first two clients, and we represented them as a third-party contractor to continue to negotiate with property owners.
Yep.
They took that work in-house. They hired employees instead of contracting it out, which I understand. No harm, no foul,
yep.
Right? So we decided, well, we've got all this experience, right? So why not put it to good use, and why not continue to be involved in that transaction? But why not represent the property owners?
Right.
We've been on the other side, so let's do this. And so, we started, negotiating on behalf of property owners to get them compensation for the right to be on their property. And, we were very successful and have been. And then some of those property owners were like, well, what else can you do? Can you do anything with my trash? Can you do anything with my electric? Can you do anything with my gas?
Yep.
And the answer is, you know what? We probably can. Let us look into it. And so we were able to. I've got a broker now that I work with who does electric and gas under our umbrella. And so we kind of evolved into Multifamily Utility Solutions because we aren't just, cable and internet anymore.
Yeah.
And then as far as trash, I've got a colleague who I refer people to. He's an expert there. I'm not an expert there. I will never be an expert there. So I refer people to him. And then anybody that asks him about cable and internet, he refers them back to me. So we really complement each other very well.
Right.
Yeah. So
cool,
that's kind of how it evolved. Yeah.
Right. That's a pretty good story of how you, just kind of grown what you guys do there. And, it came from a need, there's definitely a need for what you do. So that's definitely powerful, man, that you kind of put this stuff together. But, I'm just curious about, why isn't more people using services like yours if they're out there?
Well, I think what we found is that especially people that are new to multifamily or maybe think that they don't have enough units to do this, they just aren't aware of it. They aren't aware of that. They think that, well, I don't pay for one of the first things people say when I start talking to them is, well, I don't pay for I don't need an agreement because I don't pay for the resident's cable, right?
Yeah.
And so I have to educate them. And that's what we do a lot. I mean, I have a lot of phone calls with a lot of people just to educate them and explain that, okay, so let's say, I live outside of Cleveland, like we were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah.
So let's say that Spectrum has the franchise to operate in the city of Cleveland, and I own a multifamily property 100 units, high rise maybe in Cleveland.
Yep.
Well, the rights that the city gives to Spectrum only gives them the right to operate in the city common areas, the public easements. Anytime they go onto somebody's personal property, they have to have an agreement with them. So if I'm a homeowner in Cleveland, when I sign up to have Spectrum provide me service, I'm signing an agreement that says, yeah, I'm giving you permission to be on my property as a single family homeowner. Now, in a multifamily situation, it's a little different, right? So I own the multifamily. You may be a resident of mine and you want Spectrum service. You can't give them the right to be on my property. So the property owner is kind of a gatekeeper, right?
Yeah.
So there's an extra step in the process that needs to take place. And chances are that this happened at the very beginning when my property was built, but chances are that that agreement or whatever terms are lost because the property's been sold numerous times, the cable company's been sold numerous times, it wasn't filed anywhere, or it's expired. So there's a new opportunity to go back to the cable company and say, hey, you know what? I need to get an agreement in place. I want to know what my obligations are, right? I want to know what conditions you're on my property, under, and that's when we usually are able to generate some revenue for the property owner as well.
Yeah. So, like, as far as a unit count, what's the ideal unit count to try to look for a service like this to come out and help us with that?
Well, 100 and above is really the sweet spot. Now, and one of the advantages to working with us is that we work with multiple owners. So let's say I've got an owner, let's say you've got 50 units, and let's say you know somebody else that has 100 and they know somebody else that has 150. We put those people together and we approach a company like Spectrum or Comcast or Cox or whoever it is and say, look, I've got 3 owners, but collectively they've got 300 units. So it gives us a little more leverage. It gives us a little bit more bargaining power.
Yeah.
This just happened this last year in the last 6 months in Dallas. So I had one owner that was about a year and a half ago that had 74 units. And we went and we asked what would an offer be? And they gave us a proposal, and it really wasn't that generous, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
So we decided to pass, and we decided to pursue other owners in the marketplace to try and create, more leverage. And so we did that, and we collectively came together with 1,600 units. So the 74 became not 74 on its own, but 74 as part of 1,600.
Right.
And as a result of that, by getting that many together to work together, they ended up getting twice the offer that they had when it was just 74.
Wow.
So that's another thing that we are able to do is kind of build these kind of like co-ops of owners, and create more leverage. Cable companies like it because it's more efficient then, they're not dealing with 12 owners. I might be dealing with 12 owners.
Yeah.
So it's easier for them as well. And they like to get, properties under contract.
Right.
It helps them because they like some certainty too, right? They're like, okay, so I know I'm going to be on that property for the next, 10 years or whatever the term is, so it kind of is really a win-win.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely sounds like it. So what's an example that you can give us where somebody implemented this strategy and it saved them a ton of money, like actual numbers wise? Do you have any examples like that?
Yeah. I mean, there's 2 different types of compensation. So if you own a 100-unit property, and we go to a cable company, one thing we can get is what's called a door fee or a signing bonus. And that is a one-time fee paid at the time the contract is signed, actually within 90 days of the time the contract is signed, one-time lump sum money.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is what's called revenue share. And that's basically what it sounds like, right? It's ongoing. It's almost like a commission.
Yeah.
So you help them grow their business, you get more revenue. It's usually paid out quarterly, and the percentages are usually a sliding scale. It depends on, because the higher the penetration. So let's say you had 25 out of your 100 people that had service. You
Yeah.
may get 2% of the revenue, right? If you were able to double that to 50 of your residents, help them get that many more, not only would you get twice as many customers that you'd be getting revenue from, but your percent of revenue may go from 2 to 4, for example.
Yeah.
So not only are you doubling the number of residents, but you're doubling the percentage. So you're really getting 4 times the amount of revenue. Because then you're in it together, right? You're gonna help them grow. And let's face it, I mean, in most cases, owners would prefer that people take cable over a dish or something like that, because it's just the aesthetics of it, and it's the dependability of working with for as many complaints as people have about their cable companies. They're big, they're there, they have resources there, and you can usually, maybe it takes a couple calls, but you can usually get the problem resolved, as opposed to somebody who maybe has a dish, or somebody who brings in a smaller company that doesn't have as many resources locally. And the other thing they do is they keep up with the technology, right? I mean, chances are very good that you're going to get the best technology when you work with your cable company.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you mentioned something about the dishes on the property. Is it possible to make it that you can only have cable? Like, if you own a community, is there any laws against saying, hey, you only get cable if you come here? Like,
let me first and foremost say I am not an attorney, and I am not giving legal advice.
Right.
I am pulling from my experience, and I can tell you that I know of owners who have written into their leases that they do not allow dishes.
Yeah.
So I know that it's been done. Now, the word of caution I would give is, if you're a new owner, you have to be careful, because if it's not in your lease already, you have to give some time to renew all your leases, and because they may be under contract, right? So if I'm on your property and it's not in my lease that I can't have a dish, and I have a dish,
yeah,
and I have an agreement with DirecTV, for example, for a year, you can't come to me and say, hey, I'm going to force you to get out of your contract with DirecTV.
Right.
Then you're forcing me to, break a contract. And so you got to be careful how you do it. But yes, I know of owners that have done it.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, I mean, it sounds like the service you have there, man, is very valuable. It can add value to a property. So do you ever have any owners approach you while they're doing their due diligence on the property, or looking at an opportunity to buy something?
Yeah, oftentimes. I mean, we actually had one in Kentucky. I think it was probably about 3 months ago, where they came and said, look, we're looking at this property. What can you tell us? And we were able to find out that, there was no contract in place, but the cable company had approached the current owner.
Mm-hmm.
And so the new owner's like, hey, wait a minute here, no contracts until we get the property. If there's no contract now, you can't enter into one.
Right.
And so, we were able to find that out. So, yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised how many times there actually is an agreement in place and it doesn't show up in due diligence, because people just don't think about it sometimes.
Right.
Or they, when they bought the property, maybe they didn't get it, right? So let's say you bought the property from somebody and they didn't give you the cable contract, and you never thought to even look into it. And let's say I'm buying it from you, and we're doing due diligence, and you turn over all the agreements to me, but you don't have a cable contract, so you don't turn it over. Yeah. The only reason you didn't turn it over was not anything that you were trying to put over on me. It's just that you never got it from the previous owner. So we then have to go back to the cable company and say, hey, is there an agreement here?
Yeah.
And find out that way.
Yeah.
So, so there's, that's, we always say, no time, it's never too early to talk to us, because at least we can tell you. We actually had one in Texas this last year, and this is something else I want to touch on, and it is that We only get paid if you get paid. We don't work on retainer. There's no hourly rate. We get paid a commission based on what we make you.
Right.
So we like that because it's a win-win.
Yeah.
So up until the point that we make you money, we're working for free. And that's okay with us because we're in this business to build long-term relationships. And we realize that, you know, sometimes you got to invest. So I had somebody contact me and they were looking at buying a property, and we were able to find out that there was an agreement in place, and it was an agreement for what's called bulk service, which is basically when the owner pays for service for all the residents.
Yeah.
Okay. So the cable companies love this because, you know, then they're not rolling trucks out there every time somebody moves in and out. They've got only one bill that they send out. So they're not sending out 100, they're sending out one. Let's face it. I mean, you're going to pay your bills more likely than some of your residents, right?
Right.
So you know, there's no collections. It's just so much easier for them. So they like it. So that's why they push it a lot. So we had an owner, but this owner didn't want to do bulk. They didn't want to take on that liability because, for one reason, the occupancy was low at that point. So I think it was like 75, 80%. So they were buying the opportunity. They wanted to come in, renovate, and then get it up to, you know, 95, 100%. But in the meantime, they didn't want to have to pay for all these units that were not using it. So, because on a bulk deal, you pay for all units, whether they're occupied or not, and all units, whether they use it or not. So that's kind of some of the downside, but there's upside as well. So we were able to find out that, hey, there's an agreement in place, and you know, and he and our recommendation was there's a window of opportunity to, because it's coming up on an auto renew period. There's an opportunity here for you to have the old owner cancel the agreement before you take possession. So then it's on the old owner that it was canceled, not the new owner. And it worked out well because then they entered into a new agreement.
Yeah.
You know, because they were able to.
Right.
So yeah, so that was one success story.
Let's touch on that story right there. So the pros of it is, you know, they get to have one bill for the whole community, right?
That's the pro for the cable company. So the pros.
So how does the apartment owner benefit from having one bill come to them?
You know, different owners look at it differently, right? So if I'm looking at it, it's an amenity that I can provide that maybe the complex down the road doesn't. It may be something that I can kind of say, look, if the resident is looking at the property down the road and they have, you know, there's a 600, but mine is 700, but it includes cable and internet. You know, the potential resident might say, well, I'd probably spend 120, 150 on internet and cable anyhow. I'd rather go to this one, and then I'm only paying $100. Yeah. And the owner wouldn't pay $100 per unit, so they're making a little bit of margin on that as well.
Yeah.
So it's a way for them to possibly make some additional revenue.
Right.
And provide an amenity that, you know, maybe the properties you're competing with don't.
Yeah. And
you know, but
the con to the owner would be
you're on the hook.
Yeah, you're on the hook. So if you got some units that's not occupied, you're still paying for that. Yeah.
Or if let's say you're providing cable and internet, but let's say I'm a guy who, you know, isn't there that often, you know, I'm out a lot. Maybe I just want one basic level of internet service. Maybe I've got Hulu or Netflix or something like that. Yeah. And I don't really place a big value on that. I don't want to pay the extra 100. I'd rather go down the road, pay the 600, and then pay the cable company 50. So I'm getting what I need for 650 instead of 700. So, you know, it can work both ways.
Yeah.
You know, you got to know your market. You got to know your property. You got to know your residents and your clientele. You know, everybody's like, well, what can I get? What can I get? Right. Our business is as different as buying multifamily properties, as different as, you know, every property is. The agreements that we can get are different as well. So, it depends on it depends on how many units we have. It depends on the marketplace, how competitive it is. It depends on who's the incumbent cable provider. And then they take it a step low, dig deeper and say, well, wait a minute here. I've got 100 units here and I've got 20 customers. How much am I really going to give them compared to, hey, I've got 100 units over here and I got 80 customers. What's my return on investment? So the cable company is always looking at their return on investment as well.
Yeah.
Just like we do when you're buying a new property, they're doing the same thing. So that's why it's hard to say what deal we can get a property owner until we have more specifics. What's the property, what's the market, what's the cable company, and what are your goals? Do you want bulk? Do you want revenue share? Do you want door fees? What are your goals?
Yeah.
So that's why we got to take every single one. And that's why those are the first things I ask is, like, before I can tell you what I can give you, why don't you tell me what your goals are? Tell me more about your property so I can better understand that.
Yeah. Man, that's awesome. I mean, the thing that you guys are doing is a great value that you add to apartment owners. And I will be in touch with you in 2020, man, because I'm going to be making some noise in 2020. So
I'm counting on it, Willie.
Absolutely, man. So tell my listeners, man, those, because I know there's going to be other apartment owners that are listening to this podcast. How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, the easiest way is Kevin at Multifamily Utility Solutions.com. That's our website. There's some other videos on there. There's some additional information. That's the best way. My phone number is area code 248-930-4768. That's on the website as well. And I mean, we talk to dozens of people every week and just educate them. Hey, I've got an offer. I just talked to a guy yesterday, Savannah, Georgia, right? He's got 114 units down there. They're not ready yet because they're not closing until the new year, but he wanted to find out more. What's the opportunity there? Right. Here's the cable company. He told me a little bit about it, and I gave him a sense of what we might be able to do. And so we're going to talk in the new year.
Yeah.
So we do that a lot, which is fine. So I go to some of these, shows, conferences. Yeah. And so I've been to the same one 3 years in a row. 2 years ago, I met this guy and he had like a couple duplexes. But I spent the time. I spent a half hour telling him about what we're doing.
Right.
The following year after that, I saw him and he said, man, I was just thinking about you because I'm going to be closing on 60 units and I'm going to call you. And I'm like, great, give me a call.
Right.
In that year, since he closed on his first 60, the guy's now up to about 350 units. So even though he only had 2 duplexes 2 years ago, when I first talked to him, I educated him on it, and I built the relationship with him. And now he's a great partner, and he's given me a couple of referrals as well. So, you invest in people, you invest in educating people and hope it comes back. And it usually does.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I agree 100%. If you give to others, it's going to definitely come back to you, man. So
no doubt about it, man. No doubt about it.
Fantastic. Well, hey, I appreciate you coming on today, Kevin. And, let's definitely stay in touch.
Sounds perfect, Willie. I appreciate it, man.
Yes,
and best of luck, man. 2020. It's going to be an awesome year.
We're going to crush it, man. All right. Later.
Thank you for listening to the Generational Wealth Through Commercial Real Estate podcast, brought to you by Onyx Capital Investments. Onyx Capital Investments works with investors nationwide to invest in income-producing real estate in emerging markets. Connect online at www.onyxcapitalinvestments.com to learn more about what we're doing. If we have added value to your life, please leave us a review.